Welcome, everyone. Today is September 17th, 2024, and we're focused on a Digital World Town Hall meeting, which will basically focus on 60 minutes, 30 minutes of general report out over the last week of things that have happened in the world, as well as specific developments within the digital world, and then 30 minutes of general Q&A and discussing some of the details. We're grateful for the co-host on. We've got Elle, as well as Terrence, as well as Wally. Thank you for your time. If you've got any particular support-related questions, you're welcome to direct them there. This is a private membership association. As a reminder, some of the things we may discuss may be forward-looking. The things that we're historically focused on within the digital world are secret combinations within specific locations, whether it's in finance, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in oil, whether it's in big tech, media, and how they go into governments and actually take over public ecosystems that are monetary systems. So how they actually go in through voting systems, take over, and then through project finance, whether it's with wars, whether it's with disasters that are natural, whether it's with the World Bank, the Reserve Bank, or the IMF, or all of them combined. We're discussing how decentralized systems can actually enable an alternative to that. The digital world has basically been about 15 years in the making, over 30 million worth of pure money that has been non-tainted, doesn't have BlackRock, doesn't have some of the other ecosystems behind it. And we're helping to find the natural, normal balance between governance and government, whether it's an individual that is decentralized and free versus a government that is focused on highly centralized systems, trying to find the balance between those two and enabling technology to actually help humanity. It primarily works by, instead of using an Apple phone or a Google phone and basically, there goes our lights, and basically using logins to their systems, you can actually use decentralized systems, own your own identity, own your own data with a key that is actually disruptive. I'm going to turn on the light again. We're pretty late in our part of the world, and we're getting started late, but we're grateful for those that are in attendance. As a reminder, we actually have a live audience, and some of these folks will be asking questions as we come in over the next little while. So again, we're focused on keys. And if you didn't understand that, these keys that are individually owned, and some people may say, well, I've got a wallet here and I do this, but these are very unique and different, because how these keys work, it actually ties to all of your other assets using derived keys. And people may think, I don't understand what they're saying, but in the future, what this means is artificial intelligence and machine learning cannot follow individuals as they have assets. Maybe it's login details, maybe it's your own data, maybe it's passwords, maybe it's wallets, maybe it's photos, maybe it's text, maybe it's your health information, maybe it's searches or credit. All of these different systems are very important for people to understand. Some of the things that has happened in this last week: one, Trump came right here to the city that I'm in, Park City, Utah, as his fundraiser was postponed prior. Today, or this last week, it actually happened. This was a day before he was actually potentially assassinated in Florida. So massive occurrences there. We also had the Glenn Beck folks, as well as Tucker Carlson, come through. I want to just mention that it's really neat to see folks like Elon and others basically funding the alignment of people that are of like minds. It's also interesting to see some of those that are of like minds, whether they will focus on money and really make what's happening within the systems all about money. One of the things that's been sad over the last 2 years, we've had some interesting opportunities within the Glenn Beck ecosystem. I won't dig into them particularly, but this last week, actually 3 days ago, while in Dallas, trying to meet and continue forward, some very interesting happenings, which we'll talk a little bit more depending on how things pan out this next week. But this was in Utah. This was actually in Florida. And so you'll see this is the second assassinated attempt. This is a AK-47. It shoots a 7.62 by 39 round, which is right in between a 223 and a 308. It's a Chinese/Russian-based round. It originated out of Russia, but China makes tons of them with their SKSs. But a solid weapon, not as accurate as some of the others, especially the 308. But I don't know any of the details that are here other than what the media has put out. And I'm just grateful that this man is still alive. This is not something that just purports Mr. Trump or President Trump, but it's literally a topic that is all revolving around the future of a couple different choices. You know that we're in the technology world. The things we focus on is around technology. One of the interesting things is recently the World Liberty Financial Network has been announced by not just Donald Trump, but also his son, Donald Trump Jr., as well as Eric Trump. And we'll see some of the other elements. By the way, we've reached out to these individuals. I did a bunch of different panels with them monthly on the Clay Clark Show. Didn't spend a lot of time with them personally, but it was neat to just see their spirits, their hearts. And it's interesting to see them jumping into this environment. But what we're talking about is two topics. One is around elections and what's happening. And two, that is around technology and what will actually potentially be realized. And I think it's very important for us to understand the details. These faces are 20 people that were actually running for president of Mexico that are now dead, all within 2024. These individuals literally wanted to help change Mexico and some of the things that were happening. So, and if you don't believe me, just go look at your whatever news channel you want. But these individuals no longer live. It's not attempted assassinations. 20 people lost their lives. 20 people have mothers and brothers and fathers and parents that are no longer breathing. I think it just needs to be a serious reality check that we're very lucky to have this man continuing to kick along, and not just that, but standing up for what truth is. This woman was elected president of Mexico on 5th of June. On the 1st of October, she'll actually take a stand. This last week, we were actually down within the Mexican country, particularly one of the environments within, and I won't be specific. Actually, I should show you some photos. I'll see if I can find some photos while we go through Q&A. But we literally spent some serious time going through multiple different environments, whether it was Mexico, Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, and back to Utah just within the last hour. But it's very important to understand some of the advancements that's happening within these environments, not just to take the Mexican country live within the digital world using Mexican life, but also some of the hackathon things that'll be happening within Tulum, and environments actually started today for the next 3 days, and how it will actually potentially add within the Pacific Union, the Mexican environment with these other wonderful countries of Atua, the Hawaiian environment, Rarotonga, Atutaki, Vanuatu, Tuvalu, and Tonga. So, and Aotearoa, there's a special listener that we'll talk about a little bit on this environment a little bit later, but massive engagement and involvement within the Mexican country. If you haven't seen it, go to mexican.country. You can see the system actually being rolled out. One of the most advanced or recent advancements is particularly within the consulates that are actually issuing current physical passports in the future on how they can actually be decentralized. And so we'll talk about some of those environments, as well as the Utes and their involvement. We spent some time not just in Utah, but also in Colorado with some of the environments where they were literally pushed around from environment, and not only pushed around. The way I asked some questions is like having to walk up to 500 miles, not carts or anything, just literally pushing them into different parts of the world. We talked to a lady today, actually on the Ute reservation, and it was really neat how she's like dedicated the last 15 years of her life to say, you know, many folks think that they were pushed into this environment, but when we look back, it was actually a blessing, because this environment, particularly in Utah jurisdiction, is really their own what the world would call reservation. I think we all get the opportunity to live on the earth, but in their particular land, so to speak, that they've been banished to, if you will, they have massive oil wealth. And what's the value of that? I believe it gives them the opportunity to take a breath and actually look at what sovereignty is. Now, when we look at the Mexican environment compared to the Utes or the Chickasaws or the Navajos or the Cherokees or the Hopis, it's important to understand how lands and assets can actually become one. Some of the things that we'll talk about as it relates to Trump and technology is what we look at american.republic.country. And you can actually see systems that are identity, health, voting, finance, businesses, so how you create a company or an organization or a trust, currencies or equities around commodities, equities, and currencies, how they can actually be exchanged, and then disputes, particularly how voting can actually happen. And we're going to do a poll in a second around that. One of the other things is not just Texas, but also Texin, and how these environments can actually come together and be one within the digital world environment. Some folks have said, well, how does this relate to the world? Why haven't we heard of this prior? And I would say, if you look at the phases on the right, you've got phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 is particularly within the Pacific. So how it actually gets rolled out within those countries we talked about, Vanuatu, Aotearoa, the Hawaiian Islands, Atutaki, how they actually understand what's potentially possible, and then how it can actually roll out within their respective regions. What's important is phase 3. So phase 3 is an environment where we basically seeded it way before COVID. And you're going to see, again, today, this is September 17th, 2024. In about 3 or 4 weeks, finally, it will come out that the BRICS environments, China, India, South Africa, Russia, all of these, and Saudi Arabia as well, all of these different countries are coming together with technology that is not Ethereum. It will be based upon the Ripple-based protocols and assets behind those. So they create assets on the Ripple stack like XLM, but it will be respective to their own country, and then they will back assets. So for instance, China will put precious metals, gold. For 50 years, 40 to 50 years, they've been acquiring precious metals, whether it's platinum, gold, silver, you name it, and they will back them with that along with others. And you'll see certain assets within different regions that will do the same. When you understand what I'm talking about with October's announcement for BRICS, and then see how phase 1, phase 2 come together, a lot of these things are going to become very relevant very fast. When you talk about kind of a go-to-market and how the digital world is focused, we've been working directly with governments for the last 2.5 years, particularly the governments that are outlined here and some of the ones that we've mentioned within it. There's also indirect and direct partners. The indirect partners are within compliance-based ecosystems, and the direct stuff is within Clear United, which is one of the Clear companies that actually helps as a service provider to the digital world. A little bit more details, but it's important to know that a lot of these different environments are going to be going live within this next month, within the next 3 weeks. So please, some people don't believe some of this stuff, and some of the photos have actually been removed of the slide deck. But here's an example in Russia, in Moscow. Now, this, and I've actually got some bigger, the screen behind us was actually all about, and in some prior environments I showed how it was rolling out the tech, but it's all about what is the potential of rolling out these different technologies. These are different countries. This again is in Moscow, same environment. It was like a month-long endeavor, but it's basically pulling together unity way before any of the Ukraine nonsense and shenanigans started. So this represented a large chunk of the world and basically a new type of financial system, identity system, etc. So this is actually some of the stage. This is kind of my view out in the top photo. I won't be specific in the individual on the bottom. This is in South Korea. And so this is around identity and actually the technology that came right out of Utah based upon the folks on the team, particularly Sam Smith. Phil Winley was actually on stage here with me. He's an old-time friend, was actually a board member of a prior business. And this is all about identity for the future. This is in Saudi Arabia. Long conversation here, lots of depth. These are some of the countries that we're talking about. Notice the dates. This was May of 2018. Notice the countries. This stuff is by design and been going on for a long time, and you'll start to see it actually announced with the BRICS announcements next month. The thing that I want to talk about is really Ethereum versus Ripple. Why? Because as Trump and his family have started rolling out what I would look at as, let's see if I've got a slide here, as the World Liberty Financial Network, or however they're coining that, it's really important to understand what is that versus the digital world. Why did they register it? Why is it a new thing? And why is the digital world not a part of it. There's a whole conversation to be had there, and that would be one challenge this next week, is to try and find the right people to have that conversation with. The digital world that we're talking about and this whole town hall event is all on was there well before the Digital World SPAC fund was actually announced. And maybe there's some baggage there, but it's really important for us to get to the bottom of that, because unity within these new systems and alignment is massively important. Why? Because the same question that I started asking, Ripple versus Ethereum-based ecosystems. First off, I want people to understand, how did this start? So this individual actually was given the opportunity to sleep on the couch of one of the Ripple leadership. Not only that, to be an employee with Ripple as a contractor, but then couldn't actually get his visa to be able to pull in to the Ripple ecosystem physically within the United States of America. I won't dig into the details because you can research it and it's none of my concern or business. But what I can tell you is that the Ripple-based technology and stack, even though it is far superior from a transaction time, from a clearing, and now from a I won't talk about a security and exchange perspective. Why? Because I believe that will change with a lot of the political positioning that will actually be realized. But when you look at Ripple, it will be the future. Here, I'll pull up on a new slide and I'll give you an exact reason why. The ability for Ethereum to do transactions, it takes about 3 minutes unless you pay some more gas. So it's an expensive system, and it's a system that actually isn't real time. Some folks say, well, if you do this and this and this, it is. But the core technology of it, without the fees, is not. And so when you look at it at massive scale, it's very important to understand the differences between these two, time and price. Those two factors are what differentiate these stacks. Now, one could argue that, Ethereum was blessed by the SEC and Ripple was targeted by the SEC. And most recently, within this last week or two, the Ripple targeting has been somewhat defined. The fees have been assessed, et cetera. But I think it's really important to note that this battle is not over. If anything, I believe that Ethereum is being tagged to be able to pull assets within controlled-based environments over into the Ripple-based environment. Now, I think it's important to even take a deeper dive. Let's say digital world versus Ethereum ecosystems versus Ripple. What is the difference? And for those that want to understand, I'm going to jump back over to this digital world site and scroll down until we get to the competitive comparison table. So this chart here will actually help you to see the differences. I'm going to go ahead and take a screenshot real fast so you can see the differences between the digital world stack, the Ethereum stack, and the Ripple stack. And really, it would also be the Ripple stack also comes into the Stellar environment. So it's important for you to see the comparison between the twos. And really, the smart contracts is one of the things that Ethereum is solid on. But that doesn't tie to all of these other environments and systems today. One could say, yes, we're actually going to figure out how to get the systems to actually do these types of things. But the digital world is already there. And one, it does real-time transactions at no fees and is focused already on the government ecosystems. We'll talk a lot about more on why that is material, important, and viable as a future argument or topic. So again, the digital world versus Ethereum versus Ripple. I would challenge you to say, who's going to win the elections? And what if it is Trump? And Trump's environment is focusing in on Ethereum as well as cross transactions within stable coins to others. We're getting some feedback for those that are just joined. So that's a really big topic. What if Mrs. Harris gets in? By the way, the Ripple folks, we're getting some feedback. If one of the auditors can or moderators can find that, that'd be great. So Ripple is aligned with Mrs. Harris. And a lot of folks would say, we don't believe that. Maybe it's just a founder. Maybe it's just an individual or two. But I would argue that the Security and Exchange Commission is literally going through a process. I'm going to have to help here. And we're going to go ahead and mute you if that's okay. Thanks, bud. So the point that I'm trying to make is it's really important to understand the political positioning and what's going to happen in the future with the technology side of it. Because what happens if Kamala wins, or Mrs. Harris wins, Kamala, what happens if Ethereum is targeted by the Security and Exchange Commission? What happens? And they've aligned the technology, which is slow and it's expensive, and then one side wins. So it's basically, we have to answer these two questions. It's a technology question and a political question. And what I would argue is, where is it going to be? And that's what we need to really understand. And then we need to help align or define, which historically has been a form of averses, to align the world liberty financial environment with the digital world, and see if there can actually be some alignment there to help actually facilitate some of the things that are potentially there. And let's talk about what are some of those things that could potentially be there. For those of you that have a Clear phone or an Apple phone or an iPhone that is running maybe Hawaiian Life or any of the Life apps, if you could go to this URL, which is american.republic.voting or .country/voting. I'm going to go ahead and send this to the group. So I know some folks within this environment actually have this app. So if you could just literally, we're going to show you how it actually works. So let's say I want to change this vote from here. I'm going to refresh for those that are new to this technology. So you can see there's a vote here. I or others can go ahead and just start voting in real time. Let's say I want to vote for some independents. So it's going to pop up a QR code. I'm going to grab a phone that has a Life-based app on it. If you don't know what a Life-based app is, please continue to do some research. I'm going to go ahead and just select the Digital World login. I'm going to put my fingerprint. I'm going to scan it first off. This is 5-factor authentication. So it actually just approved that vote. So you can see it shifting in real time. So you'll see, that actually went from here over to here. And I'll actually do another one if someone wants to do this at the same time. So literally people can actually see this happen with multiple votes in the real time. So you can see that the percentages are shifting. So I can see my vote shift up. But if we let's see if we refresh this. So you'll actually see a couple other votes that actually pop in here. Can I get confirmation that anybody else was able to vote in there by chance?
Yeah, I voted.
Okay, wonderful.
I voted.
Awesome. So the point that I'm trying to drive at is helping people to see how a voice can actually be realized in real time. And it's not just on one topic, but multiple. Notice that this is actually expired. So if I try and vote here, it won't allow me. The other thing that's also important to note is it'll do things around. So you can see that that's expired. So you can see this poll up here is not. This is actually running to November 5th. So let's go ahead and I'm going to shift over here again. Every vote is actually being recorded in a chain, so to speak, so it can be audited by a third party. So what I'm trying to help folks to understand is if the voting happens a certain way and then the technology is adopted by different parties. So let's actually put 2 slides here together real fast. Let's just put this right next to this one so you can really understand what I'm talking about. So let's say that on the right, Ripple is Mrs. Harris's solution of choice, even though she's really not focused on crypto, but the leadership inside of Ripple is actually pro-Harris. And then on the left here, let's say that Trump is pro-Ethereum. What's going to happen if one or the other get into leadership? I would argue that if Trump gets in, it's going to be a level playing field. But if Mrs. Harris gets in, what historically has been a hall pass by the SEC to the Ethereum-based platform, I believe could actually be removed and then targeted. And ultimately, I believe that the Ethereum environment is actually an ability to actually transfer into these environments. So, and then that goes cross-border, which is with this whole BRICS topic that we've been talking about. So the thing that's important is there's a third party that's involved in all of this that actually is built off of the Ripple environment and Stellar environment, but focused on governments that actually can enable their citizens or nationals to actually govern themselves and taking back what the Republic of the United States or America has actually been built on. So a lot of that, which is really a standard of a currency, which ties to a gold standard or a silver standard. So imagine native physical silver that actually gets procured or purchased at the normal spot or just above spot that then has a digital receipt that can actually be asset backed, truly asset backed. So silver, gold, it also ties into foil-based assets. These are off different environments. Phil Lane, some of the Hopis, the Hawaiians, Texans, Mexican, as well as Mr. Trump with this is one Liberty Note design. So the point is you've got bars, you've got foil, like what we're seeing here, and then you've got coins. And those physical assets then turn into the actual financial system, which was actually lost in 1971. So for those that are not aware or involved, these are all topics that are massively important. These are some of the ways that it could be adopted within communities, within vehicles. This is something that's interesting around, we won't dig into this right now, but as well as homes and responsibility and team members. Some of the other things that have transpired, and then I'll go to just general Q&A after this particular topic. And I personally don't have a lot of understanding or history, but this is a topic this last week, in addition to the different assassination attempts and multiple different topics. There's some interesting stuff that directly and indirectly relates to some of the things that we're doing within the Clear companies and the digital world, because it's around an attack that potentially could be, for instance, this gentleman said, hey, they are using, and I'm not going to be specific with any they, because we're neutral on this. They're using targeted artificial intelligence and machine learning to understand your cellular habits, where you are physically, and then doing attacks. They know when you're home, they send a bomb there, you're done, or your family's done. And so they said use pagers, right? So when they start using pagers, the next thing you know is they start blowing up. You can see 4,000 people wounded just today, 200 in critical condition, and 11 killed. This is from pagers, the old pagers that we used to carry around in the 90s. So I'm going to stop there. A lot of topics, thoughts, perspective, live audience, please, now is your time.
Hey, Michael.
Hi, Becca.
Just going back to what you were talking about in Mexico that's happening right now with that, what did you say that it was, there was like an app or something happening in Mexico?
It's a hackathon
for private innovation?
It's a hackathon for 72 hours. It's basically starting out of the Tulum environment, particularly about multi-chain and cross-chain integration.
Okay, that's cool.
That's what that's
about. Sorry, I mentioned before about the RBA.
Steph is actually on. Go ahead. The RBA? Oh, you're talking about the Australian?
Yes. Yeah. So today in Australia, they are drafting an RBA document with some peer parties about the central bank digital currency for a wholesale. Not so much focusing on a retail, because there's too much risk in retail. So there'll be like a 3-year study research on how wholesale CBDs can help the bigger side of the wholesale community. And really, like, the retail CBDCs, they're not, like, we have to understand that CBDCs at a large scale is not viable for a human being. Like, we can't survive on a CBDC alone controlled by a central bank currency. It's not viable. And this is why, like, what's probably happening in Tulum right now is very good for private innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And so the draft that they are doing is not focused on a retail CBDC. It's focused on a wholesale, and it's going to be a 3-year study research on how that moves in the environment.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right.
So I love what you're doing with it. I love this. This is why I'm here every week, because it's so important from a private innovation standpoint, and to protect liberties, freedom, communities, very important. So I would love to know how that. I would love for you to report back on that after.
There's actually some folks on this call that may want to provide some feedback on that. If so, we'll let them. Otherwise,
okay.
We'll jump to the next question or topic or feedback that anyone may have.
Yeah, well, I'm like part on that here, like, like everywhere, trying to connect all these pieces, because this is exactly it, like it's really being able to utilize all the solutions and all the platforms to create bridges for humans to be able to have this drive into better future, brighter future, into a regenerative thing, into a control based on love and based on collaboration and in community, in trust, and these technologies of trustability and blockchain and all of the different expressions of it all can help to achieve that. But it's not just the technology, because the technology is there. There's many options, or like many integrations that can be done, but what we're missing is the human piece of getting together, right? So this is the Universal Declaration of Peace integration for the UDP DAO, for that base that unifies all of these languages at the end, that what blockchain is, so this is very exciting, and I'm very like amazed with all of the things that are going to be connecting through these bridging, because at the end it's like, bring your piece, bring your own project, bring your thing, bring your technology and connect to it, and let's find a way that we get this base, and then everything is just able to integrate into a regenerative DeFi, right? A refi DeFi system that can be working in many ways for the real connection of the community and the technology and the nature, and how can it serve all together, right? Implementing like AI and a lot of different technologies and machines to transform the value from plastic to fuel, and from like all of these actions from people, and like of course a lot empowered and guided by art and by music and by concerts and experiences that bring us these like other vision for our human and for our future, because like our news are full of fear and things and horrible like craziness everywhere, right? So let's get like some of the good things out as well, to be strong, very connected, and be able to put all of the solutions and proposals all out to the world, into that hope of like knowing that there's another way, and it absolutely can be unstoppable, if we're all together, united, we're unstoppable, because there's always a way to keep them connected. So yeah, it's really interesting, and I invite you to join and to see what piece you can add to Peace. You can check it on universaldeclarationofpeace.com. There's also the hackathon there. You can join. You can even join 10 minutes before it's over, and like the piece that brings like the whole magic. It is going to be contemplated, the people, of course, that entered from the first in the beginning, but anything that you can bring up to this peace ecosystem and this creation of freedom and prosperity and union for the planet is absolutely welcome. So please, do. And of course, we're going to find a big way of utilizing all the infrastructure that digital world already has, and being able to bridge that with all the communities that are into that other community networks, blockchains, or whatever languages at the end, and also the people that does not know anything and that need to be on board in an easy way, right? So we're also looking for the smart wallet to make it like very simple and easy with an email and all that. So, getting all of the experts, all of the heads to put a little piece on it. And I think this code can be very magical in 72 hours. Absolutely, yes.
I look forward to seeing some of the results there. And thank you for joining us and for helping to make that a reality. So,
yeah, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for being part of it. I told you that you were a big inspirator of all of this effort and this finding and the way of bringing the piece on that way. So, yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Other thoughts or feedback, topics, related, not related, observed? Anybody else?
Thoughts and feedback from Maui. The concept sounds good, but it also sounds Pollyannish in the sense that when you got to deal with the big bad wolf of the United States, that's got all the power in the world right now anyway, it's almost hard to believe that it's possible. Many people are familiar with the line of fires, but that's old news for everybody else, for everybody. Unless you're involved in an immediate issue, it's old news. And but for everybody that's left behind, whether it be in California, Texas, whether it be Florida, wherever, all these processes are put together and they were all working to each other so that it's almost impossible to get out of it. Insurance is a great example in one case, but the rebuilding of an area, another case, and all these things that just cohabitate within each other that makes it next to impossible to escape. Any thoughts on that?
I think that the systems are all going to reinvent themselves in the future.
Exactly.
For instance, when we talk about insurance, you're going to have, whether it's title insurance or mortgage insurance or auto insurance or health insurance or life insurance, it's all going to change. The whole system's going to change because the data is all different. And it's all around, heuristics and data sets. And it's not just insurance, but everything: mortgage, finance, land management, disputes, how businesses are created, how reputations are managed or at least understood, whether it's an individual reputation, whether it's an asset reputation, whether it's a company or trust or organization, how it's passed from one generation to another, and give people the ability to actually pick where they want to be based out of. And a lot of people today, for instance, yourself, when we look at these nations and these environments and even the phase sides of it, are we one people on an earth that's rotating around space? I won't even say around the sun, but we're all a part of the human race and family. And it's important for us to recognize that. And then the local environments that we all get to be a part of, whether we call that a country or a county or a state or a providence, those environments can actually choose the systems. And some of them are like, well, insurance in Russia is different than insurance in Mexico versus insurance in Canada. The systems and the algorithms and the companies, but ultimately it's the same type of thing that you're talking about. It's defending against a risk. For instance, what you've seen there in Maui, I'm not going to talk about how it happened or what. We all have our own perspectives there, at least if we've done our own research. But is it something that we believe could happen again? It's like lightning striking twice, right? So it's not just insurance, but many other industries. Here's some of the services that you can see, all these different systems, from health to land to finance to payments to how communications has happened, whether it's voting or councils, all of these different systems can actually have maturity around ecosystems. And when you dig into who's actually been buying all the software companies over the last, set of 20 plus years, a lot of it ties to the BlackRocks and the ecosystems that are basically at the top. And who is BlackRock and how did they get there? And how does Bank of America tie into it? How does Merrill Lynch tie into it? How does using machine learning, and way before people understood machine learning, actually enable BlackRock to actually function? And that's why decentralized systems are such a massive threat to those centralized systems. They've spent decades and decades building up, probably not decades and decades, but well over a decade, building up, buying these different companies, whether it's in insurance, like you're talking about, Charles, or whether it's within, exchanges, commodities, equities, currencies, which is really where they originally started out of, into other systems, whether you talk about, financial services and how money is moved around with American Express or with Visa or with MasterCard or others, and how those different world systems, I won't be specific, actually are owned by these centralized ecosystems. But what you're talking about with insurance is just one example of an industry that will literally be rewritten, and, platforms, software platforms based upon different chains. And whether you're talking about blockchain or whether you're talking about decentralized systems, it's all going to end up shifting. So it would be interesting to see some things happen there in your environment around insurance. Why? Because I believe that the jurisdiction is what is the biggest inhibitor. For instance, in the state of Texas, how many title companies are there? Are they still there? How many insurance companies are they? Are they still there after the fires? And then when they really dig into the law and the annexation of the state of Hawaii versus the Kingdom of Hawaii, why they would actually offer certain types of title insurance. So title and insurance go together in that particular conversation. But it's just interesting. It'll be very telling to see where things go from there. So I hope this is the
Well,
top.
my more simple viewpoint is that they're incestuous with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And why would they want to even bother trying to give up their stranglehold?
Well, what they're gonna do is they're gonna try and adapt from the centralized systems to decentralized systems, kind of like what we talked about way earlier. So they're gonna take their hierarchical structured systems and try and adapt them to decentralized technology, but still have their control. You're seeing that within a couple different ecosystems. I would argue that within the Ethereum-based ecosystem, a lot of these different funds actually went in and bought out those environments. So they went into these environments, and it's a way to channel from Ethereum-based assets into Ripple or others through things like stable assets, et cetera, whether it's USDC, which got $100 million from BlackRock, or whether it's Tether or USDT or others. And I won't be specific on the details behind those, but they literally, or even Bitcoin, there's certain folks with EFTs and other things that they speculate on. But again, I still think that depending on if President Trump can get in versus Mrs. Harris, there's going to be a different alignment from a technology standpoint. We've got a serious question to ask and validate. Hopefully we can get to the right people to have this conversation. But, what happens if that gets an X on it? And by the way, for those that don't understand, you're doing cross-chain transactions. It slows things down as well as has more costs and brain damage that people I don't even think they understand the realities that are associated with that. Because when you build these systems, you've got to build them on massive scale, massive volumes, and full interoperability. So that's why the technology with the digital world and Ripple will absolutely interface, because they're built from the same core, versus learning like the founder of Ethereum learned from what was happening at Ripple as a consultant, quasi-employee, quasi-friend, that basically built an ecosystem that really did a lot. I mean, they absolutely did a ton when it comes to adoption within different ecosystems quickly. And I think a lot of that was you had the Bitcoin ecosystem that was really pushed out there in 2008, which really ties to your question, Charles. The insurance companies behind the mortgage companies is what failed to cause the housing crisis with AIG, which then literally created the collapse within the financial system. And that's how Bitcoin was born. People said, we're sick of the lack of accountability and responsibility within the financial systems, the exchange systems, the mortgage systems, the insurance systems. And Bitcoin was really an attempt to solve that. The problem is it's not fast enough today. And I would say from an architecture standpoint, it's very distributed. Some people would argue, no, China does this and the transactions does this. But I believe that with what happened with Satoshi Vision and Bitcoin Cash and others, there was so much noise that I don't know if it was developers got into the code and slowed it down, or it just wasn't scalable from day one. But the technology that we're talking about within the digital world and the Ripple environment will absolutely scale to hundreds of thousands and millions of transactions in real time with what could be zero cost. Now, the Ripple environment does have some costs. That's where the XLM side of things and XRP side of things within Stellar/Ripple all basically have their environment. So next question, thought, comment, feedback. Charles, if there was, I don't know if that made sense to you, but really Bitcoin is all here because of the basis of your question, not necessarily the fires or Hawaii, but based upon insurance with AIG failing, which then had in turn ripple effects on others. So thank you for your comment, Charles. Next comment, feedback, thought. Billy, I'd love to hear from you. If you've got anything to add or contribute, which I know you usually do. Danielle, same type of thing. Always very involved and aware of what's going on. Others, any feedback, thoughts?
Adam has a question.
Adam?
I don't really have a question. I just introduce myself since I'm sitting in space. I'm just intrigued by a lot of different aspects of what's going on in this world. I'm from Texas. I'm 34, that kind of thing. Don't know a whole lot about the crypto tech world. I'm learning. Mm-hmm. Never stop learning, but I do know some, but I'm sort of lost in space with a lot of it because I let technology pass me, I guess is how you would put it.
No, you're 34 years old. Buddy.
Thank you for having me.
You're good to be in the middle of it if you want it. And thanks for joining us. We look forward to a future dialogue. Billy, go ahead.
I think probably the only comment I'll make is a high level one around the direction of where this is going. Ultimately, we must look for the pathway to privacy and decentralization. Whether Harris or Trump wins, I don't think it's going to change anything. I do feel that ultimately the trains may be different, but I think the destination is going to remain the same. It's just like here, what we've seen in Australia, what we're seeing here in New Zealand. We've got a new government. It's only 9 months old, and yet, we were promised that a conservative government would take us away from globalism. They were going to offer a new methodology called the national interest test about whether we will go into international treaties or UN treaties or tariff agreements. They would have to pass the threshold of a national interest test. That isn't going to happen. Next week, we go into the United Nations World Future Summit, where the World Future Global Pact agreement will be signed off by member states. And then we're going to see a ramping up of loss of privacy, loss of freedom of speech, and ultra surveillance of every financial transaction a person can be involved in if it's digital. So again, just emphasising the importance of the conversations that you have, Mike, and I'm probably here for the same reasons that Becca is, and that everyone is that we want to be a part of a solution, because we're getting good at identifying the problems and what the threats are, but it's that solution piece that we need to look at, and how do we take what you're offering and talking about here as a potential solution. How do we take that and magnify it and amplify it out to the world in the quickest way possible? Because everybody, again, 22nd and 23rd of September next week are going to be watershed days, moments in history when they sign this Global Future Pact consensus document. When they sign that off, this is bigger, I would say, even bigger than the Earth Rio Summit in 1992, where they brought in the whole Sustainable Development Goals and Millennium Development Goals. This is going to be bigger than that, I believe, and it's going to have more acute and rapid consequences to citizen privacy, enhanced government overreach, 15-minute cities, vaccine passports, all of that stuff that we know as the central bank digital currencies are ready to go in both Australia and New Zealand. Our banks are mostly Australian-owned here, and our National Reserve Bank, the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, has already announced that it's ready for central bank digital currency rollout. They're employing people now for management roles to roll that out. So just highlighting the need to investigate what you're doing and help you in any way we can, Mike. That's probably my comment there. And just last piece, referring to what you asked about earlier, there has been more intel out there about what's happened in Lebanon with the pages. The IDF, Israel, has admitted to basically implanting an explosive device in all of these pages that they knew would go into the hands of Hezbollah affiliated Lebanese people, and that it was a Trojan horse type of piece of technology that they pushed a button and then all of a sudden there's a whole lot of injuries. The problem is that it wasn't just Hezbollah fighters or combatants; they were non-combatants, including a little girl that's been killed amongst that number that's currently at around about 18 now. So yeah, we need to be wary and pray for peace, and as the earlier person said, let love be our guide, but we've got to be vigilant and help you in any way we can, Mike.
Is there any knowledge that we're seeing on these devices, if it's something that was by design or if it's something where they're able to target existing type of lithium iron phosphate type batteries with a remote detonation like this?
No, it sounds like it was purposely. It wasn't just a generic. They got a frequency and found it and was able to send a frequency out into the spectrum to set this off. It sounds like it was they were loaded that way. So Hezbollah, the leader of Hezbollah, had actually sent out a warning signal to all of the members saying they've got to stop using these types of technology because the IDF is able to get onto it, and they have in this case. And so that warning came too late, and several thousand of them have been harmed by it. Mm. So again, it does sound like they were preloaded. It wasn't just a case of they were able to sort of identify what frequency they were on and send out an activation signal to make it explode. It sounded like they were preloaded at this point anyway. I'll find out more.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to speculate or create more fear, uncertainty, or doubt, but these look like just the same pages that we had in the 90s. And I would be interested to understand the actual explosive device to see if it's something that's different than a normal, silicon memory CPU disk communication device frequency, as well as the, battery structure. So just primarily because, what we've got within the ClearPhones, these environments, these phones are built in such a way where not only did we pay to have, for instance, let's take these devices, we actually paid to have 5G ripped out of them. We paid to actually enable these devices in such a way that they're secure, not just from communication, but they're actually decentralized phones. So the same thing that we're focused on here around these encryption keys, it's the actual phone and the apps, memory, contacts, calendars, photos, texts, all of it could basically be decentralized with the individual being the only one that actually owns that data. But what's interesting is the hardware itself is built in such a way that it's secure so that the operating system and the app store and the actual, decentralized architecture will actually scale within the future. So these are some of the historical models here for those that haven't seen. Now, most of them are all sold out. And then some of the current models here, actually a couple of these are sold out now, and then some of the future models. Hopefully in the future, we'll talk a lot about some of the X phone stuff that we've been working on, and hopefully advancements there that's massive in material. But grateful for the involvement, your feedback. And hopefully next week we can actually talk about more knowledge. I know that this news is breaking as of today, and go from there. So other thoughts or feedback or comments? Billy, thanks for being here. I also think it's important from you being an individual. For those that are not aware, Billy was really in the same place that President Trump was on the last elections, where he was running for the equivalent of President of the United States of America. In New Zealand or Aotearoa, it's the Prime Minister. And they were using Dominion voting systems, and literally it was stolen from right underneath him. And so a lot of the knowledge and experience of where we currently are sitting right now, just a couple months before the elections, I think it's going to be very interesting to see, just what happens. I don't know about those that are on the call, because I know you have perspectives from all around the world, but everything that I'm seeing in all the different environments, I just literally spent 5-6 days traveling. And whether it was from the Mexico environment all the way through Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, there's Trump flags all over the place. Even in Colorado, where you wouldn't think that they would be solid. When it's down in Arizona, same type of thing. There's Trump flags everywhere. It's very interesting to see, how things could actually take a shift, and hopefully they don't. But hopefully voices for Americans are actually heard, and the reality around transparency within the voting system is actually realized. So other thoughts or comments or feedback before we wrap up today?
I have one more comment to say.
Go ahead.
I think that the people are just as good as their governments.
Say that again.
At the end of the day.
The people what? Say that again.
People are just as good as their governments.
Yeah.
We need to understand that as people. We can't be going down these cycles of this person versus that person. This is what blockchain was invented for as well, is to have transparency. And working in communications and technology, it's very difficult because we're just regular people at the end of the day. And truly, people are as good as their governments, and people should understand that.
That's well said. Very, very well said. Other thoughts or comments? Okay, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you for all that you do and stand for. We actually won't play there's an interesting video around NFTs. We won't play that. We'll go ahead and just wrap up briefly by some of the stuff that's actually coming off of these pagers. More fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I think your comment is even more important, Becca, around, we need to not read into it, so to speak. That's an interesting. We'll see everybody next week. Much love, and we'll talk to you later.